Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Before I answer any questions, just I'll rattle through some rehab updates real quick. Cedric and Aaron Hicks are both doing well. Not ready to put out exact dates for them yet. They still have some milestones before we'd be comfortable doing that. But I think the hope is that each of those guys will be able to play a large bit of August for us. So we'll just kind of leave it at that for now. But those injuries are in the process of resolving. Michael Givens and John Means are well into throwing programs and going well, and I think we'll see each of them in the box scores of the Florida Complex League to kind of start their rehab game climb. We'll probably be seeing them in the early part of August in game action down there. With Dylan Tate, he is not yet in a throwing program. He's progressing towards one. Do not have a timetable on him, but suffice to say it would be later in the season that we'd be looking at him returning, but we still have hopes of bringing him back before the end of the regular season. And I may be omitting somebody off the top of my head. Aiken, you should see pitch in Florida and then AAA, hopefully in the early part of August as well. So a lot of this stuff's right around the corner. Don't have the exact dates off the top of my mind, or the exact dates aren't settled yet, but the large majority of the guys I touched on we should be seeing in the next week or two in minor league game action. And then I think we saw yesterday Jackson Holiday was scratched. He's ill. He'll be out for several games. So I just wanted to clarify that in advance. And that's it. I'm available for any questions. Voth is still in his rehab assignment right now in Norfolk. We have a bit more of that to go in terms of making sure he feels good and his strength is there and that he's recovering outing to outing and able to cover the amount of workload that he wants to and that he needs to. So we're still in the midst of his AAA rehab.
It's still way too early to know when Means returns, and he'd say he's hoping for by September 1st, what that role would be.
I think it's going to depend on so much that I don't have right now, like who's on our team, how they're doing, who's healthy, how's he looking, that we have no concept of that. I mean, obviously he's a starting pitcher from a career standpoint and a skill set standpoint, but the circumstances of the team and him in particular will drive that decision. But I do think that the kind of early September marker is one to keep an eye on for him as things stand right now. But as we saw last time, weird stuff happens and timelines can change. So we'll take it day by day.
You've had D.L. Hall in Sarasota for over a month. I saw he was in a game. What are your plans for him?
Well, he's back. He's healthy. Threw well the other day on Tuesday. I think he threw one inning. And my understanding is he's going to now throw 2 innings or something along those lines on Saturday. And then we're just going to keep building, eventually get him out of Florida. I think the interesting part of the decision with DL Hall will be whether to build him all the way back up to 4+ innings like we were with a starting pitcher, or possibly see fit to truncate that, get him up and running as a relief option for the stretch. He knows that. It's not something that's been decided. And again, like with Means, a lot of it's going to be influenced by information that we get on the Orioles over the next few weeks.
What's the purpose of him being in Sarasota again? Was he injured or was he working on strengthening?
So he got injured prior to spring training. He had a lower back injury, came into spring training with it. Eventually, the decision was made to get the back injury resolved to basically stop him from doing any strenuous weightlifting activity or things of that nature until the injury resolved. And it did resolve, but he lost quite a bit of strength, muscle, explosiveness. We were, for a while, simultaneously trying to build that back out while letting him compete in AAA. And it was going okay, but it was slow going. I think both sides were a little frustrated having to do it that way. And as we've seen some other teams do, we decided to utilize the rules available to us to send him to Florida, where he could focus first and foremost on getting the velocity and the strength back, and sort of not worrying about his box scores in AAA. And so now we're at that point of transitioning it back out into real minor league baseball. But I think he's in a good spot, in a better spot than where he started, and he's very healthy, and he's also very fresh for the second half, so that might be nice.
Has there been development or improvements in terms of his velocity?
Yeah, and I think it's still improving, but he was in the mid-90s the other day, and it was good to see.
With the trade deadline coming up, what areas of the roster might you still want to improve here in the next few days?
Well, I think if we are going to make additional acquisition trades, I would bet heavily they're going to be on the pitching side of things. I think it's no secret that would be the areas of the team where we could either use more depth or B, look for upgrades. So we're working on that right now. But this stuff, I don't have total control over it. It's two-party transaction, and there's a big market out there happening right now, and we're participating in that market, and we'll see what comes of it. But those are obviously the conversations that are first and foremost for us on the pitching side when we're looking to bring in help.
Mike, when it comes to the deadline, financially, how open will you guys be to potentially accepting player salaries? Are you financially impacted at all when it comes to the deadline?
Yeah, we've had a lot of high-level discussions, planning scenarios, and our baseball operations group has the wherewithal from the CEO, the partnership group, to make good baseball trades that could add to our payroll if we find them. So, again, I'm not going to make what I think is a terrible trade and force it just so we can point to something, but we definitely have the flexibility to do that. I think that's great, and we're going to be considering opportunities.
Given you guys are in first place, entering the deadline, things are different than they have been in past years. What does a good baseball trade look like, sitting there right now as the GM of a first place team?
I think anything I say here is going to be sort of pablum that you get from any baseball general manager. Our jobs are, we're trying to win. We're in first place. It's awesome. We want to make a deep playoff run. We want to get in the World Series, whatever you want to call it. We want to do that. But unless we have information that the world is ending in November, big part of my job is worrying about the overall health of the team over the next several years. So you just try to balance all those things. We have tested methodologies that we've used over now 3 organizations to help us make those decisions. We're applying those to weigh the opportunities that come along. They know those methods help us weigh the impact of an addition for the 2023 run and the expense of that going out the door, and then also how much we want to balance that against 2024 and 2025 and 2026. So I'm just saying, like, this is kind of the job. I think ultimately we're measured on the results of how all these things go over a several year period. And it's really not easy to do or to get it right. So we're just trying to take all that into account. But clearly, if we, I think we're going to want to stretch a little bit and reach to try to help this really good 2023 team if we get within arm's reach of something.
Mike, you had said that, that you guys want to win, not just win, but make a deep run into the playoffs. Do you feel, as objectively as you can be, do you feel that this team is good enough to make a long run into the playoffs as is?
Yes, I do. Doesn't mean that we don't want to improve. I mean, the Dodgers are pretty good too, and they're bringing some extra help in. So obviously we're looking at that. But I think very clearly this team has revealed itself to be as capable as anyone arguably in all of baseball right now to make a playoff run. It's seems like kind of a flat landscape this year. We're in the best division and we're on the top of it right now, but everyone's got by a good margin, has a winning record in our division right now. So it's just we're right there with anyone, I think.
Mike, does kind of keeping up, you bring up the Dodgers, does keeping up with the Joneses factor into the front office decision making at a point, hey, so-and-so could be someone we see in the postseason, they've made a move, we need to make a move to quote-unquote keep up?
Yeah, it can. I think if the Dodgers are who we're worried about, we're in pretty good shape at that point. But yeah, yes, we're keeping an eye on what our divisions do. I mean, look, we're a game and a half up in the division. There's a long way to go. You're not just worrying about the Rays in second place. We've got, like I said, 3 other teams that any one of those could challenge for the division. So it's certainly part of the equation is keeping an eye on what other teams are doing as it pertains to kind of forecasting where we're going.
Also, you
Mike,
guys have
said
had,
that the world obviously is probably not going to end in November, but you guys are in first place, whether you thought this was your window or not. Is there still a sense of urgency, though, to make this team, because they're playing so well, make this team really good, because you don't know what next year is going to hold, you don't know what 2025 is going to hold?
Yeah, I think everything that we do, we look at sort of probabilistically because we don't know. And so we do our best to estimate what this season's looking like, what the rest of the season's looking like, what next season's looking like. And I think with the position that our players have put us in right here, and how well things are going so far and where we are, I think it's fair to say that if we get within reach of something, we're gonna reach for it a little bit to help this team. But we can't set the minor league system on fire just because we're in first place. So that's just our job to balance all that.
And has ownership been pretty supportive in the conversations you've had about kind of letting you do what you feel is necessary at the trade deadline in terms of maybe adding payroll to what's the existing payroll is?
Yeah, we have latitude to make baseball moves, and possibly those are adding payroll relatively significantly, but it doesn't mean we're going to do it. I think the ball's kind of in the court of the baseball ops department, which is great, and I think it's a big testament to the the management environment that we have here, and how much trust this group's gotten from partnership level, ownership level, John Angelos. But it's up to us to kind of navigate this, and like I said, we have to find a match with other teams, and they're doing their things too.
During the
When you
regular
talk about
season,
the
you
plan
guys.
that you-
Go ahead, Corda.
When
Sorry.
you talk about the plan that you put in place when you got here, where are you right now? Do you look at this team as ahead of schedule, or are you kind of right on pace where you set out to be?
I'd like to say I set out to be in first place 5 years from starting, especially with everything that we went through. But I did not. I never sat down and wrote that out. I particularly through the Astros experience, kind of lived the fact that the timelines can be a little quicker than expected if things go well. A lot of health and luck-driven stuff to determine your timeline. So we just tried to work as hard and fast as possible. And, I'm very happy with the spot that this organization's in right now, being currently in first place and arguably the strongest division of all time. And then, having the number one farm system, it's all great. So whether that happened last year or this year or next year, I think it's a good outcome, but it's very clear to me that this season's not over, and we have a lot of work left to do. We haven't won anything yet.
You guys have been so good in high leverage games, late in games, and one-run games. Do you view that as a strength you already have, or when you look at guys you could acquire, is there going to be a premium put on guys who have had postseason experience in high leverage games?
Honestly, the market right now is thin enough in terms of the number of pure sellers right here as of this day that I think if we started pushing aside guys that don't have a lot of playoff experience, it would really limit our options. So I don't know how much that's really going to be it's obviously you talk about it, but whether you're going to pass on a trade that you like because the guy hasn't pitched in the playoffs yet doesn't seem like it's in the cards. The way that this market's shaping up, it's definitely a seller's market at this point in time. And we've got a great back half of the bullpen, but there's a couple of spots that were in flux. We're hoping Fujinami kind of grabs one of those. Certainly we've seen flashes of what that could look like in Philadelphia. And it's an area that any team can improve the middle part of their bullpen. By definition, you can always improve the middle part of your bullpen, but obviously we've got the best closer in the game right now, and relative to him, the middle spots are an area that we can look around for, and we're doing that in addition to the Fujinami trade. But we'll see where we're at in the next 4 days.
Mike, beyond the trade deadline, how much of a priority is it going into August to create a plan for managing the innings of the young starters?
Yeah, it's becoming more of a conversation. I think the we're trying to be mindful of indicators that they might be exhibiting, that might be reason to pull back other than just sort of the academic concept of like, oh, hey, look how many innings this guy's thrown. Let's back that off. There's really not a ton of science or any science there. We try to use common sense. We try to use our expertise. And also, I don't know that a single member of our rotation right now wants to go leave the rotation in some way, shape, or form. So there's that too. I mean, they're having the seasons of their lives. They're competing. The team's in first. They've got their whole careers ahead of them. Some of this is what it is coming out of that 2-year COVID schedule craziness and sort of the unique circumstances that a lot of our starters had where they were hurt for a couple months last year. Basically everyone except Gibson and Irvin, I think, spent a decent chunk on the IL last year, so they're missing innings.
Like, two of the trends so far we've seen in the trade deadline is, one, it seems like some teams are packaging 2 players for others, maybe a reliever and a starter. And also, I guess there's also been a couple trades where a major leaguer for major leaguer has been swapped. First of all, do you see yourself taking away from the 26-man roster at this point? And also, would it benefit you, the team, given the prospects, to have a package type deal? Getting 2 players.
Yeah, I think first of all, we're wide open. This is probably the largest breadth of conversations I've had. The last few years, we've basically been selling. Last year was a little bit of a mix and match, but we ended up selling for the most part. And the number and type of conversations were more narrow. This year, we're talking to 29 teams and basically comparing notes up and down the whole spectrum of agendas and seeing what there is. So we have no intent of subtracting from the 26-man roster. Obviously, this is a group that's working really well together, that we're happy with all these players. But, yeah, it comes up in conversations, and if that's something that we need to consider to make the trade that we want to make, and it's, we'll balance all that, I can't rule it out.
Given the years that it took to build the #1 minor league system in baseball and the grassroots that it took, does that make it harder to possibly part with those assets, assuming that's what many people are calling you for?
No, I don't think, obviously there was time and hard work and, not just good first-round picks and good player development, but also some fourth-rounders and some international guys. And, it's just, that's not going to make us hug those guys more than we should because, we did a good job scouting and developing them. So I don't believe that's going to make us any more reluctant to make a trade. I think we're making trades because we feel that the value that we're getting back in a different way, shape, and form is worth the value that we're losing. And, we'll keep it to that.
The fact that you're ahead of schedule, does that make it more challenging, I guess, to self-assess your system? And do you feel like you've had the runway to really know the guys you absolutely want to keep and perhaps those that you might be willing to part with?
Yeah, it's tough. We've we've kind of systematically assigned some scouting resources and obviously our PD staff to doing a good job of kind of ranking our internal prospects right now. I'm sure every team does something similar, but we try to do that. I've looked back to past rankings I've been a part of, and there's some whoopsies in there. So it's you got to watch out. It's tough trading away young players. So, but yeah, we've I think what's nice for us is we have some players that we rate really, really highly in our system, and they're also on the top 100 lists and stuff. So it's not like us overrating our own guys.
What does your history tell you about the final few days before the deadline? Have there been teams that look like they're in, but maybe they win the last 4, change their mind, or teams maybe lose 4, and now maybe somebody's in play?
I kind of feel like that's more possible this year than a normal year. A part of it is the new rules with the new wild card. And then the more balanced schedule. It seems like the central divisions are really flat, and then the American League East, like I keep saying, has 5 winning teams. It just makes everybody glom onto the info. Excuse me. Every win and loss has some information to it more than normal. And then there's a couple really interesting teams right now that are still haven't declared what they're doing. And, we're talking to a lot of them and kind of have our eyes on some stuff. And, we'll